I have the privilege of introducing our next speaker, but first, I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion work that we've been doing in CEDAR over the last couple of years. So sort of the motivation for this was back in the 2020 virtual meeting, a number of members of the community, both students and faculty and other folks, participated in a workshop that was focused on sort of DEI, right, and sort of the reckoning, racial reckoning of the summer of 2020, where we talked about issues regarding diversity, equity, inclusion in CEDAR, right? And really from the feedback that we received, that we thought that the best way to sort of, address some of these things was to form a DEI task force, right? And so the goals of this task force that we've had now for the last couple of years was really to formalize DEI at CEDAR, really normalize a presence and talk about these things at CEDAR, recognizing that it's important for the vitality of CEDAR and its science, and then also to try to figure out ways to promote and improve diversity, equity, inclusion in CEDAR. So there are 12 of us on the task force. You should see most of us around this week. Please reach out to us, talk to us, provide suggestions. Any of those things, we'd love to hear from what's going on with people, and some of the things that we want to encourage people to do to get involved is we have a DEI statement and a call to action, as well as some action items that were suggested on by the community. So if you want to add to those action items things you think we should work on, or just sign the statement in support of some of the work that we're doing, that would be awesome. We have a DEI Slack where we try to post monthly, if not more often, depending upon what's going on in the world. We also hold these monthly-ish DEI happy hours. We're going to have one tonight, celebration of Juneteenth and Pride Month, so we hope that people can make it to that. And I guess I would say the last part, you've seen this sort of scrolling slide, but this year we have 4 different things devoted to DEI. One is our next speaker. Then we have the happy hour tonight. We have a preliminary talk tomorrow in the morning time, which should be really good. And then we also have a session. We're going to have 4 different speakers come in and talk about different DEI-related topics. So if you're interested in joining the task force, please reach out to myself, Lindsay Goodwin, or Julio Urbina, who should be around this week. You can send us an email or just run into us and talk to us. That would be great. So let's get into one of these now. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Aaron Piña. Dr. Aaron Piña is a program scientist at NASA headquarters in the Earth Science Division, so a little bit different than heliophysics. His background is in atmospheric science. He has a bachelor's degree from Texas A&M and a master's degree from Colorado State, and he got his PhD in ecology from Colorado State as well. Now Aaron's sort of role at NASA headquarters is focused on weather research and also to do data management, accessibility, and diversity and inclusion. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Aaron Piña.
All right, thanks, Mack. I want to extend a thanks to also Megan and Jushun just for getting this going. So I'm going to talk for probably the next 10 minutes. Then if there are any questions, I can chat more. I can always chat. I did want to also echo, just while I'm up here, a plug-in for NASA headquarters, what Doug was saying earlier about NASA NPP, the NASA postdoc program. There are other early career opportunities that he and I could both talk about. So feel free to find us. I'm in the Earth Science Division. Doug, tuned in with the Helio Science Division. So across the Science Mission Director, there's a lot to talk about. I do want to acknowledge just right now. I'm new to this group. There's not a lot of trust. I haven't established this amount of trust. The only thing I have is my name, my affiliation, and so I do want to acknowledge that. I do hope by the end of this I get to meet many of you. I'll be here for the next couple of days to establish this trust, especially as a newcomer into the CEDAR group. I also want to acknowledge just today, the Juneteenth. Though it was celebrated in 1866, it took well over 100 years. It wasn't until 1980 that it became a state law in Texas. I'm from Texas. I did know about it, but of course, now that it's a federal holiday, I hope that everybody across the country acknowledges and celebrates. I also want to acknowledge it's Pride Month. Happy Pride to those out there. So I do identify as gay, so this is a big month. And I do want to say that there's, it's been over 50 years of celebrating liberation from the Stonewall riots. I'm going to start right now with something that's going to be a little awkward, but I'm going to ask you all, and maybe in your mind, I may ask if a few of you brave souls. I'm going to just say, all right, I've just been talking for the last couple of minutes, and I want you to judge me. I'm going to step out. All right. I told you it was going to be a little awkward, right? I could have done a little twirl, could have, spun around. But I want you to think, anybody brave want to say what they were thinking? It could be anything, and it could be the meanest thing you could say in the world. All right, so just from the little snickers, I can hear, yeah.
It was brave of you to do that, to have us judge you. That's what I'm thinking.
Brave, okay. Anything else? Outgoing, okay, so getting into personalities. How about white?
I was going to say that you had asked us to trust you, and you were trying to establish that trust, and the fact that you are dressed appropriately for the occasion tells us that you trust us.
So talking about dress, physical appearance, and how I trust you all just for the matter that I respect you all in terms of my trust. That's good. Getting up and talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, justice, anti-racism, allyship. You have this whole alphabet soup. There's also, and I guess what I want to get to with that is each of those words, I enunciate them because they all have special meaning. And oftentimes, going back, whenever we learned the ABCs, we learned H-I-J-K, L-M-N-O, P. But those are all individual letters. They all have individual meaning. I will say that we talk about diversity in terms of diversifying the institution of science. But do we ever talk about giving back for the sciences back to the communities that we hope to hail the students from? And so there's this bidirectional flow that we often end up missing. So I do want to, when you think of diversity, what is it that you may think? We talked a little bit about some of these, and this is what's called a diversity wheel. And so there are different, personal identity dimensions. There are these internal dimensions. I just asked you to judge me. A lot of those were based on what I was talking about. They were based on my appearance. But there are also things that you can't see. You probably won't know people's sexuality unless they tell you. You can assume them, but you don't know them. You don't know about people's mental health. There are things that we harbor and that we hide. And so getting into thinking about those as elements of diversity, those are really important as we go through and we think about our science. We're not robots. We are all humans. And we're humans doing science. And we bring our full selves to work, or we at least hope so. So when we think about elements of diversity, it's not just a few checkbox that whoever created the survey came up with. There's so many different elements of diversity that are on this wheel and not even on this page. But I did want to show at least a few of these that are out here. And if you want to Google diversity wheel, that you're going to get something like this. I want to go into a next step of kind of whenever people get into diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would say regardless of your background, how you may appear, your presence is important because there's no one person who can speak for all identities out there. But what is important is that you're able to, you bring your voice, you bring that niche, you bring that experience. And that's important, and it means a lot for other populations, more than you will ever know. I've had the the honor of being able to go through these types of experiences, where I was for the American Meteorological Society, I just finished my finished a tenure as the chair of the Board on Representation, Accessibility, Inclusion, and Diversity. And that's pretty much the American Meteorological Society's DEI task force. And there you get to meet people from all different backgrounds, all different identities. And what it boils down to is just respect. And what I've learned through that tenure was that I kind of classified folks who are into 3 different categories. Those 3 different categories, there are folks who are interested and they care. Maybe they come from a background where they need allies, they need some advocacy. They join because they're interested and or they care. And then you get to some people who are experienced in this space. And that's where I actually identify myself. I fell into this space 10 years ago. I got into it actually because of science policy, and there was a discriminatory ban on blood from a certain population that went into effect in 1983 and has still impacted many people today. And it was brought to my graduate school. There was a ban on blood, there was a blood drive, and I got turned away, and I turned that embarrassment into policy and creative thinking and action. And I had other people who were allies to me, and I thought I'm always going to be giving back to other people who were allies to me at that time. So I see myself as more experienced, and there are many people who are experienced. And then there are experts. Those are experts in DEI, and those are few and far in between, right? So I would not just go around unless you're getting paid. You are a professor of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. Those are the experts. And so many of us, so those are the 3 that I mentioned are the folks who are interested and who care, the folks who are experienced, and then the folks who are expert. And that's what I've kind of seen. I'm going to go to a next slide let's see. And I'm going to actually say this is, I think, one of the reasons why I was invited here, because of an incident that happened back in January. And what happened, and I'll read this just so, there was a tweet that went out, and it was a colleague of somebody from the American Meteorological Society. And I did try to hide a lot of things, and so what I'm going to ask is, I think there's a show on ABC or NBC or something. It's like, what would you do? And so this person said, career update. Our mission to serve Spanish-speaking communities is only beginning. They were announcing a new job opportunity. And then it was a company. As this company's newest bilingual weather and climate host, we are expanding our efforts to communities worldwide. Be on the lookout for new series and podcasts in Espanol on the company's app. And then there was a comment under that. And it was from a very senior atmospheric physicist. And that person said, "When will you assimilate into America?" And there was an early career who posted this, somebody who's actually a graduate student still. And the person who said, "When will you assimilate into America?" based on this comment of somebody announcing a new position that they were going to be doing bilingual weather and climate work. This senior scientist said, "When will you assimilate?" You could think about what you may do. Many people, what I learned later, is they mute somebody like that on Twitter. They will block them. That's not active allyship. What that means is that person, you have it's not just privilege, but what you're doing is you're just pushing them away. But that person is still around to attack other people around who don't know about this person. What I did was I did a screen capture. I did not want to highlight this person. I did not want to do the honor of retweeting. But what I did is I took a screen share, and what I did is I tried to boost up this colleague. And so basically I wrote a response, and I said, hi all. This was a tweet that I did. Meet this person's name, and I put their Twitter handle out. They are a star in weather risk communication. I proudly call them a friend. I said something else. The screenshot below shows a vile comment from a senior research scientist, and then I tagged their company. And we need to eradicate this behavior from the weather and STEM fields. Now, I say this not because this should be what anybody, I don't consider myself a model or what I did the only right answer. But I did know that at that moment, I needed to use my privilege where I was to stick up for somebody who was underrepresented. And what resulted from that is this person was a fellow of the American Meteorological Society. There ended up being an ethics investigation that went underway, and the senior scientists lost their position as a fellow of the AMS. They also lost their job within a week, and they also lost, they were an editor. And I did not call for we need to eradicate this behavior. I was not calling for any of this. But this is just, it was just the first domino that ended up falling. And this person continued on. And it's, probably still out there today, talking to people on Twitter. But we have this all the time. We have this in person. This is online. People have, their screen on screen, their keyboard. They try to fight through their keyboard. But these are some things that we see at poster sessions. These are some things, these kinds of comments. And so I guess I would ask, and I think you should ask yourself, what would you do in that? And so I just want to, I'll close with something is, it goes back to respect. And I would like to ask, have you done enough around your peers to where if somebody was going through a hard time, would you be somebody that they would approach in a time of hardship? And if so, why? And if not, why? So I'll stop there, and if anybody has any questions, or we can chat afterwards. But I want to thank you all for being here and allowing me to speak. I think that was all. So thank you.
Thanks to Dr. Piña for this meaningful talk. Now let's move on to our lightning round 3, the scientific communication. During this lightning round, we will have 3 speakers. First speaker is Dr. Qingyu Zhu. He's going to talk about how to make a nice poster presentation. Dr. Qingyu Zhu received his PhD in physics from the University of Texas at Arlington in August 2020. He's currently an ASP postdoc at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. His research mainly focuses on the high-latitude electrodynamic forcing and their impact on the global ionosphere-thermosphere system. Let's welcome Dr. Zhu.
All right, so hello everyone. So this is Qingyu from NCAR. So today I'm going to talk about the poster presentation. So you may have heard similar talk before. So this talk can serve as a refreshment of your memory. But if you haven't, this talk can also give you some basic ideas about the poster presentation. So a poster presentation consists of 2 components, a poster and a presentation. So the poster is typically printed and space-limited. So one difference between the poster and oral presentation is that you can have more substantial discussion with your audience during a poster presentation. So today, I'm going to mainly focus on the poster part, and and briefly talk about the presentation, since you will learn more about the presentation from Lindsay's talk. To make a poster, so we need to do some planning for a poster. So you may start asking yourself, what are the major findings of my research? So there are definitely a lot, but you need to choose the most important ones, which can bring some new insight to the community. For example, so you might find something new from the observations, or you find something new based on the simulations or you develop a new approach which works pretty well. So now, so once you have determined the major findings you want to share with the audience, the next question you may ask yourself is, how do I share those findings? Do I need some figures? Do I need some tables or some text? So are those figures or tables ready? If they are not, you may need to make some cool figures or tables. But similar as what we have discussed before, there could be many figures. So you need to choose the most important one, since the space of the poster is limited. So now, you have enough material for a poster. Let's start journey on making a poster. So making a poster is similar to packing your clothes for the trip. I think you all have similar experience. So an easy way to find your clothes is to put the same type of clothes together and organize different types of clothes in some orders. So similar philosophy can be applied to making a poster. So first, you need to just put similar contents into blocks, the same block, and organize different blocks in some obvious flows, typically top to bottom, left to right. So on the right shows these typically used 3-column layout. So definitely you can try other layouts as long as they work perfectly well for your contents. So here is a good example in terms of layouts. So first, it has all necessary components, such as titles, abstract, introduction and motivation, methodology, results, as well as conclusion. So some posters may not have an abstract, which I think would be fine, but other components are necessary. The second good thing for this poster is that it has obvious flows, which is added by the numbers in the headings as well as the arrows between different blocks. So now you have some framework. Then what you next need to do is just put the contents into your framework. So from the poster shown here, you might already find that visuals actually occupies the largest area, which is reasonable because we respond to visuals faster than text. So, which means that you need to give the largest area for your visuals. But this doesn't mean the text is unnecessary. In fact, text is still important. If there is no word, we might end up with misinterpreting of your figures. For example, if there were no word in this figure, so we might interpret it as ice cream equal to paper, which doesn't sound that reasonable, does it? So, because the space of a poster is limited, so you need to try to balance the visuals and text. So here is one suggested way that you can apply for your poster. But definitely, you can try other ways. So, but the bottom line is just try to give the largest area to your poster, to your visuals. So, since the visuals are the most important part of your poster, so you need to make them. It's necessary to make them as effective as you can. So on the right shows one simple plot tell us that the temperature difference between neutral and ions depend on the velocity difference between neutral and ions as well as the compositions. So a good figure is that you can get some basic idea. So you can get some information at your first eye contact. So. And also a figure, so for a figure, you need to make sure they are simple and illustrative. So this is one advantage of this plot. And also the second good thing of this plot is that it has fairly large levels. So you can see them clearly from a fairly large distance. So the third good thing of this figure is that it's actually well captioned, which can help you better understand this figure. Although the conciseness can actually improve to a little. So in addition to these 3 points, you may also need to pay attention to the line widths. For example, you can actually use thick lines to make the visualization sharper. And in addition, colors are important. If they are not well chosen, the effectiveness of your figure can be decreased. So specifically, we need to pay attention to the contrast. I think Lindsay will cover this point in more detail, so I'll skip this point at this moment. And finally, so sometimes you may need to deal with a figure having too many subplots. So in that case, using part of figure may be better than using the full one. In that way, you can still convey the similar message without having too small subplots, which are not easily accessible by the audience. So here is another example where I try to emphasize on 2 points of the figures. First, sometimes you may need use some annotations to guide the audience eyes. For example, shown here, there are some annotations indicating the directions, and as well as the phenomena the author is trying to referring to. So the second thing, which is always important, is to add some, to highlight the takeaways of the figure next to your figures, typically in 2 to 3 short points. So in this way, the audience can better capture the information you try to convey from your figures. So in addition to the data visualization, sometimes you may also create some figures that are for different purposes, such as the illustrations for your methodologies or algorithms, or the mechanism you try to convey from your study. So you will be fascinated by how creative you are when you're making those figures. So besides figures, tables are also an important part for the visuals. So although you may not see them as frequently as figures. So, but if you try to add a figure, add a table, make them simple and illustrative. And meanwhile, captions and takeaways are needed if necessary. So tables can also be used for different purposes, such as a summary of your simulations, your data source, your instrument, or summary of your results. So besides, now we have talked about important things about visuals. So next, but we also need to pay attention to the text. So for example, you may need to choose some good fonts for your text. You may also need to use some border fonts at some place. And further, you might need to choose correct colors and font size for your text. So one easy way to check whether your choices for the color and font size is right is to put your poster on a letter-sized paper and see whether you can see those texts maybe from half a meter away. So if they are good, they are good. And finally, always avoid typos as much as you can. So we're almost to the end of making a poster, but before finalizing your poster, it might be necessary to check several things to make sure that your poster can be easy to be followed, even though you are not in the front of your poster. For example, you can ask yourself several questions. For example, does the poster have all necessary components? Is the content well organized? Is your text easy to be read? Is your text informative and concise? And are your visuals informative and easy understood? If not, revisions might be needed to improve your posture. So up till now, we have gone through important things for making a poster. Next, I'll briefly discuss the presentation part. So for the post presentation, the first thing might be is the preparations. So you might prepare for 2 types of presentation. One is the long version, and the other is the short version. The long version is specifically for people who are interested in your posters, such as judges, or definitely the people in your field. So, and in that case, you might receive you might also receive a lot of questions during your presentation. So you might also need to prepare for some questions. The short version talk is for general audience. So in that case, you might need to use more language to convey your takeaways to your audience. And for both presentations, it might be useful to have script or at least an outline for your presentations. So you know how to start, how to translate, and what to say for those figures. And finally, don't forget to leave some time for practice. So eventually, we are standing in the hall of the posters. And the first thing I would suggest is try to be extrovert as much as you can, even if we are not. So although it might be challenging during that 2 to 3 hours, you might receive good feedback for your research or a good collaborations in the future, which is not a bad deal. And when you are presenting, so try to refer to your poster as much as you can. Otherwise, it may sound like you are reciting your scripts. The third thing I would recommend to do is just have your supplement materials ready, either electronic or printed on the paper. So in that way, you can quickly address the questions of those the answers doesn't show on the do not show on the poster. Finally, don't forget that the poster presentation provides an opportunity for mutual benefit. So try to be nice to your audience as much as you can. For example, so sometimes audience may have difficulty understanding the point you try to explain. So you might need to figure out an easy way to help them better understand your points. Second, so you can also pause for a while when you are when you are talking about a figure. So the audience can have more time to understand what you said for that figure. And definitely, there are a lot of other things that you can do for being nice. So that you can try a lot of things. So we have gone through a lot for the poster presentation during past 50 minutes or so. So it might be we might be in a good position to answer the questions at the beginning. How to make a nice presentation? So I think it may involve 4 words. The first word is lit, so which means that you need to make your poster visually appealing. So you might need a well-organized layout as well as a good balance between visuals and text. So we also talked about improving the effectiveness of your figures, your tables, as well as text. So the second word is informative. So you need to convey the most important information from your poster as well as the presentation, such as the topic you are working on, the motivations of your work, the methodology, the result or the takeaways of figures, as well as the major findings. The third word is concise. So since the space of the poster as well as the time for the presentation are limited, so you definitely don't want your audience to be lost in the forest of information. So you need to convey the useful information in a short but sweet way. The final word is engaging. So, and I want to emphasize this point from a perspective of presentation. You need to formulate a good story which logically connect the different components on your poster and deliver it efficiently. So, and you might also need to provide more evidence to substantiate your story during the discussion or the presentation. This may need some preparations and practices. With that, I'll stop here and hope you all enjoy your CEDAR in-person meeting and have a nice week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zhu, for the nice talk. Now we're going to bring up Slido for the questions. Dr. Zhu, please take 5 minutes to answer the questions if you like. The first question would be, can I use different colors to highlight my keywords in my poster?
So I think either way is to use red colors to highlight your keywords, and use some bold font to highlight your keywords.
Yeah, the second question would be, do you have suggestions to make my poster more colorful while still being accessible to colorblind people?
Yeah, I think that would be talked in more details by Lindsay, so just stay tuned by Lindsay's talk.
Right, great. So our next talk will be given by Dr. Lindsay Goodwin. She's going to talk about how to give award-winning presentations and impress your friends and family, or at least some good tips. Dr. Lindsay Goodwin received her PhD from the University of Saskatchewan in 2018. After that, she went to Boston University and New Jersey Institute of Technology for postdoctoral positions. She was a CEDAR student rep in 2015 and 2016, and won a CEDAR Poster Presentation Prize in 2017. She was a Jack Eddy Fellow in 2020. Currently, she's the AGU OSPA Coordinator for Aeronomy Section. Let's welcome Dr. Goodwin.
Awesome, cool, thank you. So I am very loud. When I made this title, I didn't think it was going to be copied into the agenda. So man, is this talk sold really high. But so anyways, to start off, thank you very much for having me. Happy Juneteenth, happy Father's Day, and happy Pride. To copy some other talks that are here before. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going to be talking about just some tips for presentations and stuff. These are the things that I think about. And I feel to a degree, a lot of people know a lot of the tips I'm going to be talking about. I think it's just good to kind of almost have a way of discussing them, if that makes sense. And also, I just want to say these are guidelines. There's millions of ways that you can give an excellent talk. So if there's probably a lot of stuff that I missed here. Some people might disagree. Anyways, so I kind of boil down giving a good talk to 3 basic things. You want to be heard and you want people to listen to you. You want people to see your talk, to be able to visualize it. And you want people to understand what you're talking about. So the tips I'm going to give are going to fall under these 3 categories. We're going to start off with something that's going to feel really awkward and stupid, but trust me, it'll be a little bit fun. So this is kind of how I boil down anatomy, the anatomy of talking. If you are having a hard time articulating, or if people I don't really understand what you're saying, try using tongue twisters and stuff. I'm gonna slow down for this part because otherwise I'm gonna mess it up. She sells seashells by the seashore. Practice things like that. One thing that people don't really talk about when you're getting advice for how to give a good talk is how to project your voice. I'm not talking about yelling and screaming and stuff like that. Your voice will start to get sore over time if you're doing stuff like that, so don't yell and scream. So the thing that I practice, and I'm really nervous about this because I've never seen anyone do this at CEDAR, is to plug your nose. So you notice right now that I'm really nasally. If you guys want to do that right now, just plug your nose, say your name. My name is Lindsay Goodwin. Other people can try too. Yeah. But yeah, I see Diego Sanchez over there. I see Larissa, things like that. But you can practice that. But what I recommend, if you have a hard time projecting and getting your voice across, you start practicing like this, but then you try to lower your voice to here. So instead of talking in your head, if you have a nasally voice when you do this, it means that you're trying to project out of your face. And your face is not very good at projecting. If you try and move your voice down to here, and I'm being a little bit louder than I've tried to be because I'm not talking out of my nose, you can really project to the back of the room. And I know I can be heard at the back of the room there. So that's just a really good exercise that I do, or I used to do a lot, to make sure that I was heard across the room. And I think that this is particularly beneficial for women who are overall, not for a biological reason, but they're kind of brought up societally to be quieter and stuff like that. So I highly recommend this exercise to be heard and projected and stuff like that. But anyways, that's a part of this presentation where I look stupid. The next thing I wanted to talk about was anxiety. I do think I'm a very anxious person. And like anxiety isn't necessarily, like it sucks. It kind of like hurts to feel anxious and stuff like that. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel really anxious about this talk because I care a lot about it. I'm very anxious in front of you guys because I want you guys to like, oh, think that I have a good presentation and stuff like that. And like, that's not bad. It's good. It's a good thing to want to give good talks. The problem is when it starts to become debilitating. And then like, and if you start like getting more and more anxious, sometimes you'll start to get more quiet and you'll want to like crawl up into a hole and die and things like that. And we don't want to crawl up into a hole and die. So things that I find that like help me when I start to get anxious. First of all, there was a really good quote from The Simpsons. I'm kind of dating myself here. But like there's an episode of The Simpsons where Lisa is like having a daydream about like being in a band and presenting on stage. And then everybody starts booing her like in her daydream. And she just kind of like wakes up from it and she's like, why would they come to our concert just to boo us? And I thought a lot about that, believe it or not. And like, I'm pretty sure that like there's nobody in the audience right now who like wants me to fail. I hope not. That would suck. I'm really hoping that like there's people here who want me to succeed. But additionally, like I find it really helps at CEDAR to know where my friends are in the audience. For example, I can see Brian Harding right there, and I know that he doesn't hate me, or at least I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he did. So that's awesome. And Colonel Locks like, at the back, she said like, oh yeah, like look to me if like you're feeling anxious. And yeah, there we go. Like she's supportive. Yeah, it's awesome. Like this is a place with like lots of friends and stuff like that. But yeah, so either just like if you're feeling anxious, just remember that like yeah, probably no one in the audience wants to kill you. It's fine. There's probably people who are like working on their laptops. Right now, I'm sorry. There's people working on their laptops. It's okay. It's fine. Just breathe. It's all right. Anyways, sorry, I've talked a lot about that. But something else as well related to anxiety and moods and stuff like that. I have like a really creepy way of like wording this slide, which is basically that like people will basically like for the most part like consent to the mood that like you have within your talk. So in other words, if you give a really enthusiastic talk and you're really happy and like, oh my God, like these sort of things, and just have a lot of energy, other people will be like, yeah, okay, yeah, lots of energy, all right, this is awesome, blah, 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 blah. If you want to have a formal talk, then be formal, like slow it down, like, hello, my name is Dr. Goodwin, today I'm going to be talking about blah, 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 blah. And usually people will go along with that vibe. That's how I find like moods work. But basically know your audience and know the right kind of mood that you should have. I guess kind of like a quick point as well. I think like a lot of like my success in giving talks has been like attributed to like my energy and stuff and when I come up on stage. But I find that like this kind of energy and this kind of mood doesn't really work as well when you're talking to the general public. So just kind of like a tip for there. What's good for that is if you slow down and you're like, hello, my name is Dr. Goodwin. Today we're going to be talking about the ionosphere, which is this magical place. Like, if you kind of come from a place of like whimsy and stuff and like awe, that's really good as well. But anyways, another tip as well, don't read your slides because then it looks like you just know what's on your slides, and that's it. So for example, saying plasma density enhancements are transported through the high latitude ionosphere via plasma convection streams. It sounds like I literally just know that phrase and nothing else. So I find the good thing as well is to paraphrase your slide and be like, okay, so like right now we have day-side reconnection, and what's happening, there we go. What's happening during this is we have day-side reconnection, and then this like highly ionized plasma will stream into the polar cap, and from frame to frame here, we can see that it's moving across the polar cap and being convected around. So I'm not reading my slide here, but I'm basically saying the same thing, if that makes sense. Cool, cool. The next thing we're going to talk about is getting people to see your presentation, being able to visualize it. Use big fonts. I know it's hard to fit like a lot of information onto a slide, and like this, like a lot of people forget this, but please use big fonts. Like your smallest text ideally should be around here, I find, between 28 and 24. But I've never heard a complaint that your font, like from someone saying, oh, your fonts were way too big. Like, you'll hear the other one. So please have big fonts. Make it visible, especially people who are like visually impaired and stuff, they'll appreciate that. Speaking of like DEI-related issues, color blindness, please be very aware of your color, like of your scales that you're using. So actually, yeah, oh, sorry, whoops. Going back. Oh no. Oh no. I'm almost there. Do I have to like wait a second? Was this the issue that Mack was having? Yeah, it was a little. Okay. All right, not touching it. All right, cool. So speaking of like using big fonts, I literally Googled like science plot, and I slapped it on a slide, and then I ran it through this color blindness filter. So like, there's a lot of websites like this where you can just take a photo or figure, whatever, and then see how like a colorblind person would see it. So this first plot here, like if you aren't colorblind, you'll be able to see like all these different colors, you like red, yellow, green, and blue. If you start to get to red blind, like you'll have a hard time differentiating these. Green blind as well, and blue blind, like even these ones are kind of difficult to differentiate. So there's lots of like different color blindness simulators online. Just find one, use it, it'll be awesome. One thing that can also help you with color blindness, and in general, if you ever want to print your your figures or whatever to black and white, like if you ever like want to do that for a printer, I don't know, I'm kind of dating myself here by saying like, oh, if you ever want to print out a paper and read it on a plane, like maybe you don't do that nowadays, but it is good if you want to print. Use these kinds of scales. So basically, I recommend either a scale that goes from one dark color to one light color, or something that goes from white to any sort of color, if that makes sense. Cool, cool? All right, sweet. I like nodding, by the way, because it means that people are like listening to me, so thank you for nodding. I appreciate that. It helps with my anxiety as well, knowing that I have people listening to me. Anyways. Additionally, another tip, if you have to put an arrow or if you have to put text on top of something, put a border around it. It makes it much more visible. So you can see all these different arrows here, even though they definitely overlap with like a color that they're associated with, if that makes sense. So please put a border on things, even if it's text or arrows, stuff like that. And once again, when you go to black and white, if you want to print it off, you'll be able to see all these arrows as well. So that's super awesome as well. The last thing I'm going to talk about is getting people to understand your talk. Like this was already covered quite well, so I don't know why I'm talking. Well, I'll talk about it again, but just some other tips as well. But yeah, like this has been previously covered as well. So one thing that I would highly recommend against using is a lot of text. The reason why I recommend this is because at a certain point your audience is not really paying attention to you. They are just reading your slides, and that sort of makes you being there entirely meaningless. What was the point of you presenting some fine and talented work? Touch your nose if you're listening to me. Furthermore, you run the risk of people still reading your slides while you're going on to the next slide. I think I had like, oh, okay, some people were listening. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. So a big issue is that people will just start reading your slide. They're not listening to you. So why are you even there? You could have just ran this as a presentation without you there. So I recommend please keep your slides to like 1 to 3 sentences. This guideline was broken a lot today because like we're trying to get that information out to you. But if you're trying to give a science talk, like at a certain point, people aren't going to listen to you if you're just giving like a huge wall of text. They're just going to read or just kind of zone out or whatever. Additionally, and kind of another rule that like a lot of people want to use point form. There's actually no rule that you have to use point form. You can just do whatever you want in a presentation. At least that's what I do. Something else as well, if you do have time, try and get some participatory learning in there. So you guys remember at the beginning of this presentation when we did an exercise where we're holding our noses and stuff like that? You guys will probably remember that. Because you were actively involved in that. So if you do have the time, do get people to like actively like participate in your presentations. I know that's kind of hard for a science talk, but I find that that's a good way for people to like understand and listen to you. So that's a tip as well. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is timing. So like because CEDAR is kind of like a little bit of a loosey-goosey thing, this isn't too, like you shouldn't worry too much about this at CEDAR, but if you're entering presentation competitions and stuff like that, if you're at AGU, timing is really, really important. I guess like kind of like a mean way to put it, and like I'm involved in a lot in the OSPA competition, is that like I don't want to say we're trying to find reasons to like get one person to win over another, but sometimes it can become quite nitpicky over like who wins and who doesn't and stuff like that. So I really highly recommend sticking to the time because that is a big issue like at AGU especially. A tip that I will give for that is that the number of minutes that you have is approximately equal to the number of slides that you should be using. in your presentation. And that's kind of what I aimed for in this presentation as well. Something else as well is that like if you're starting to run out of time and like you still have like 50 more slides to go, first of all, you should plan better. Second of all, if you start to rush, I don't know about you guys, but I start to like tune out if someone's like, oh my God, okay, no, next thing, okay, polar cap patches, like I'm not listening at that point. Like I'm just like watching this like unfold, this weird thing unfold in front of me. So like what I kind of like say in my mind is that like be ready to like just end your presentation at like any point. And also like what some people do is they'll put their summary at the very beginning. I personally don't do that because once again, it's like, okay, then what's the point of the rest of my presentation when I already gave you like the key points of it? But some people do that just so then like if they're cut off at some moment, then like, okay, at least they got their point across. As well, it's good to stick within the time frame because it's respectful to the moderator, as well as to the speakers. You don't want to run over time because that means other people get less time, and it means the audience has to stay around longer, and everybody's mad at you, and everybody hates you, and you're never going to present again. No, that's all like a little much. But anyways, so just kind of like as a weird summary, it felt inappropriate to not have our summary here, but really you can ignore this because I mostly just said it. So a good presentation, it'll have good flow, as was talked with the poster presentation, but as well you want to be heard, and that can be like articulation, projecting, understanding your anxiety and conquering it, setting the right mood, and paraphrasing and being dynamic, like being having a presentation that's seen, so big fonts, I'm serious, being mindful of the colors that you use, give borders to text and arrows that need it, and also it's good to be understood, so don't like have overly texty slides because at a certain point like people aren't really like listening to you, they're just reading. Try and get your audience to participate if you can, and don't run over time. And that's, I think, all I really wanted to say. I think I ran under time, but that's it. Thank you. Do I run off the stage now, or do I do questions?
You can stay here.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin, for the interesting tips. I wish I've heard this before Student Day, so I'll practice for my pronunciation. So our first question is, it was great listening to your talk about presenting while anxious. My question is, how can you be a better audience member for a speaker?
There's a bunch of ways that I feel I can answer. Oh, yeah. Or, oh, I thought you were going to say something. There's a bunch of ways that, like, okay, this is kind of weird. I noticed that, like, I feel happier when, like, okay, so I'm looking at Brian Harding again, because, like, I can see it very clearly between the lights. And, like, he's looking at me and he's smiling right now. He seems content, and that makes me happy, because then I'm like, okay, I could be happy too. That works. So, yeah, and I can see some people in the back who are also, like, smiling. So, I don't know. Like, I try not to overdo it, but, like, I'll sit in the audience and be like, yeah. Like, even if I'm not like super understanding of what's going on, like in the presentation, I just kind of smile like an idiot all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, thanks. Anything else, or?
I think that's the only question we have so far. So thank you
Awesome.
again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So our next talk will be Dr. Gang Lu giving a presentation on scientific writing. Dr. Gang Lu got her PhD in space physics from Rice University in Houston, Texas. She has worked at NCAR HAO since 1992, where she was a postdoctoral fellow from 1992 to 1993. She became a scientist one in 1993 and a senior scientist since 2006. She currently serves as an editor of JRL. Let's welcome Dr. Lu.
Thank you for the organizer for giving me this opportunity to share with some personal thoughts regarding the scientific notes. Well, even being almost some 30 years in doing research and writing papers, I'm the first to admit that I'm still trying to learn how to perfecting my English writing and being, make the paper more accessible to a wide audience. So it is all still a learning, it's a long learning process, especially for people like me, non-native English speaker. I guess quite a bit of students these days are non-native English speaker. So I will just go and say, hopefully something is helpful to you, but Listen to Qingyu and Lindsay, I see there's a lot of overlap and some points already being mentioned by both of them. So in general, like Qingyu also mentioned that writing a paper is very similar to telling a story. In order to attract an audience, you have to make the story first put a very good storylines. So this is very, very important, and this is how good storytellers always have those unique skills, can convey connecting with their audience. Similarly, for the paper, if I may, I will using 3 words to summarizing a paper, why, how, and what. So why your work is important and interesting, why you should be interested in my paper, and what did you do, how did you do for your research, and what did you find? So that's the general what the paper should contain. So general structure of the paper, yes, there's several, I think I can at least list 6 or 7 of those. Title, obviously, is what the paper is about, and the abstract, introduction, methods, results, and the discussion. So the different subject topic of the paper does not mean you have to have the separate sections for each of the. Some can be combined together, depends on your preference. That's not critically important, but at least you should cover all these points of content in the paper. So the title is basically is a concise reflection of the main conclusion of your work or main objective your study. And the abstract is a brief discussion of the methods and the data you will use in the study, and also the main findings you get from your work. Then introduction is a description of the state of knowledge in the subject area your paper is dealing with, and your motivation. And the methods should be clear. What kind of data you use, what kind of model you use, and what kind of analysis process you are taking to dissect the model results and analyze your the data. And then the results in particular is actually the core of your paper, right? But the results should be only based on the data you present in the paper. You cannot extrapolating from the data you present, or if something is not shown by the data, it's not your results. So the results has to be based on what you present, given to the audience, to the reader, or in the paper. Then discussion should be talking about the results and how your interpretation of these results, how that relate to the state of knowledge in the subject, and what you do is same and what is different from what people has done in the same topic. And then any weakness or discrepancy you have found in your work, either from the model or the data that do not fully support what your the main conclusion, that need to be clearly explained if you can. And then finally, the conclusion is a summarizing of the main findings, but also is also a reflection of any limitations or weaknesses in this in what you have found through your study analysis, and what kind of future area further work you will do in further advance this topic. Okay. So if I may, using the anatomy terms, as Lindsay has done perfectly in her presentation. So if you using the terms of some human anatomy also can be applied to a paper. In that is the title. Title is similar to your face. So for people who don't know you, the first impression they get is look at your face and make judgment. Nevertheless, But the same thing for the audience, for the readers of your paper. The first, because now these days, there's lots of paper published in your subject area. If you don't make the standing out your paper in the title, but usually people cannot read every paper carefully, but the first they pick and choose is reading, just surfing on the title, say if that interests them or not. If they turn them off, they are not going to bother to read your paper at all. So pay attention to the title. That's very important. And the abstract is like a skeleton of your body. It is the main structure supporting your body. So you have to all in your abstract. So for a general audience, readers, they first read your title, then go through the abstract set, see if there's enough information there, make them interesting to further reading a paper. So both of them are very, very important. And then the main body of the paper, introduction, methods, results, discussion, and the conclusion are the vital organs that support what you said in your abstract or what the paper is about. So of course, that's the main attention you have to pay. That's the main body of the paper. It is indeed that way. Okay. So back to the original, the 3 words I would describe in paper. So essentially, the introduction is the part that address the question why this work, why you do this work, why you bother, why you spend so much time doing this, and why the paper is worthwhile to publish. And the methods and the results is the how part, how you do it, and what the methods, you have to make all these points clear so people understand the processing you reach your conclusions from. And then the discussion and the conclusion are the what part, what exactly you find, what important scientific advance you made through your analysis, and that worthwhile to be published, accepted, such as a journal like a GRL. Okay, so that's probably what I'm saying about, I don't think there's anything you don't know about it, but I'm just, just to rephrase some thoughts or some points. Both Qingyu and Lindsay also mentioned it. There's a few other things I can also point it to is that, the first is the concise writing, and Qingyu has mentioned many times, concise. Being concise, if you say one thing, you drag on using 3, 4, 5 sentences to describe that. That turns people off right away. So being precise, being concise, using less words, if you can describe one thing, just using less words. The less, the better. And also do not present unnecessary and irrelevant information in the paper. So just confusing, distracting the main point you try to convey. That's a big no-no too. Then all the acronyms should be introduced, defined first before using them. People getting better now, but still sometimes forget about it. And the annoying referees quite a bit, as I can see from GRL papers. Then good figures, good figures worth 1,000 words. So you have to pay attention to how you produce your figures for the paper. And all the papers has to be content relevant. Make sure what exactly, for each figure, you have to think about from the paper is for readers, for others to read. Of course, you understand what you're doing, but you need to, from the reader's point of view, say, when I look at this figure, what exactly information I should be able to get without, first, of course, you have a caption, can see something, but at least the figure itself also need to be speak by itself is the main point, what you want to convey. And also the color scales, Lindsay also mentioned, and the label sizes should be appropriate in the reader friendly way. And let me see. Using clear symbols and the lines and the common point, right? And avoid a crowd of figures. If there's too many information in one figure. You just, usually readers just it's also annoying, and also some people can misunderstand what exactly you're trying to say with that figure. So again, the word concise is very, very important for both for presentation and for the paper as well. So proper English grammar, well, this is I can really emphasizing too myself, is for especially this is particular problem for non-native English speakers, is grammar issues, like typo. Typo probably easiest to fix nowadays. You can just run the automatic checker. You can pick up lots of typos. However, for me also is how you use the proper articles and the tense when describing observation data and your results. So it is sometimes with the improper use of articles, even the a, but it means to English-speaking readers, you basically sometimes you can get a very different feel about what you're trying to say. But it's even myself, I guess I'm not really fully get it how exactly. Or sometimes for some what exactly the articles I should use and make the points more clear to the readers. But this is also I see from GIL as editor of GIL and the referees complain about the improper articles and that is also related to unconventional English writing. This is something I don't think there's a simple rule. You can just read the book and read the guidance and you learn it. But something is a slow learning process. You interacting with a native English speaker or colleagues more and writing more paper, you gradually learn some, improve on your skills. But it's a never ending, seems like a learning process. At least I personally, feel that way. Well, important thing I have to say multiple times, revise, revise, revise. A paper is an iteration process. You have to go through several iterations in order to make your content clear, better, better, and better. So, for example, you have to keep checking, is everything clear writtenly? If I'm using different words, does that better convey my ideas? Is something missing? Is something need to be, more material should be added or subtracted? Depends on how exactly the best convey your message. Again, paper is you have to look at from the reader's point of view. If I'm reading and says, do I get the same idea what I'm trying to convey? So always ask that questions. Papers is for others, not for yourself. Remember that. And also proofreading is very, very important, especially go through all these grammatical errors, and the content is have help from bad English speak colleagues or using professional service, especially for these foreign authors. I always tell them, the English writing is not good enough. I have to reject your paper, and until you get better, the writing is much better, and otherwise you just waste everybody's time. Reviewers' time is also variable. So I guess I'll just stop here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. We have a couple questions for you. This way. How do you balance about stressing the scientific significance without making too strong of conclusions?
That's okay. That's very excellent questions. So, strong scientific conclusions is not what you say. From the reader's point of view, you have to tell them why you reach this conclusion, and let them agree with your conclusion is important. But it's not just what you say, it's their understanding of the important. That part is very critical. That's, again, is you have to make your content fully correctly understood by the readers.
Next question, we have any advice, how do you balance about, Any advice on speeding up scientific writing, especially for long-term, larger projects like dissertations? It often takes a couple hours per page.
Well, writing thesis always take much longer than you thought you originally planned to. So again, there's no easy ways or easy trick you can do this. But it is a learning process. So I think it's a practice. I don't know anything else I can say about it.
All right, and our next question. From an editor's point of view, how should the author suggest potential reviewers?
So yeah, potential reviewers, okay. You can suggesting what is most relevant, fair, so, the fair, honest, and helpful people. You want them be your reviewers, right? So your paper. But on the other hand, if they just a friend and give you all good words and say, wow, this paper looks great, it should be published, then another reviewer says, well, it's total crap. I have to, it's not. So, if too friendly without a constructive, really does not help you at all. So you want some people are friendly but critical reviewers and really have an intention to truly help you to improve your both scientifically and your English writing. Just considering the long-term benefit you will get from the reviewer from your subject area. So it's not just personal. Of course, when you're a student, you want to publish as many papers as possible. But if your paper is crap, it would leave that crap for during your entire scientific career. So you don't want a crap paper published with your name attached to that.
Thank you for that. Can you please explain what you mean by describing the state of knowledges in the introduction section of a paper?
Well, so that's actually a very, very important part of the introduction part. That means you need to spend a lot of time searching the literature and truly understand what is current knowledge of the subject is, what has been done, how the people are done, what kind of conclusion they have reached, and what your data show. Is your data just fully repeat what they said, or you find something different, or you look in the data, same data sets from different angle, and you find something interesting that makes your paper standing out. So you want to be, a paper, when you're writing a paper, you don't want to repeat what people already done. You want to improve on what people have done. That's what it's about eventually. Well, yeah, so again, this is a learning process. You want to look at the same issue, looking from different angles, like substorms. It has been 40, 50 years. Sometimes seems like solar cycle issues coming back all the way, then come to the same question again. What did trigger substorm? What did this phenomenon means, and what that phenomenon means? Well, sometimes some subject is like that. Solar cycle, you come back and you get more data, you have further understanding. So it is just looking at the data, front, back, side, all the way, different angles. See if you find a different niche from the data sets, or find something really people have ignored or unnoticed before. So I think just look at the unique eyes and what kind of interesting things you can find from the data. But again, this is a learning process. I don't think there's any easy way. Just quickly catch that or learn that. Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Liu. All right, so this ends the presentation portion of the student day today. I just want to go through a couple things before we finish. Don't worry, I'll try and make this short and sweet, but then again, somehow this is my first time using the clicker today. So right after this presentation, we will have the CEDAR reception held in the Onyx lobby. Then at 7 p.m., we will have the DEI happy hour in the Topaz room, and we hope to see you all there. Oh, that worked. All right. Tomorrow, please join us for the student lunch with scientists here in the Onyx ballroom. All right. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we will have the poster session. Please join us in the Topaz lobby at 3:30 on both of those days as well. All right. Thank you to the CSSC committee for making today possible. Zishen and I would also like to extend a special thank you to the CEDAR student volunteers who helped us run today. Without their help today and throughout the rest of the week, the student day and student events would not have been possible without them. All right, as I mentioned earlier, any questions that were not answered during the day today will be answered and published in the student newsletter. The student newsletter will be available sometime in July, and it's published by the students for the students. If you would like to volunteer to help with the newsletter, please email Zishen or myself. Please continue the discussions we have had today at the reception and throughout the conference. Additional avenues of communication during the conference and after the conference are available on Slack, Facebook, and the CEDAR mailing list. Next, one major request that I have from all of you is to fill out the Student Day survey. This survey helps us determine the topics and layouts for the Student Day and would be really beneficial for next year's student reps. Don't worry if you can't scan this QR code. Zishen and I will be sending out this survey, I'm sure, multiple times during the week because it's so important for developing a Student Day that has topics valuable to students. And finally, please nominate yourself or someone you know to be the next student representative on the CSSC committee. You can either email myself or Zishen. This is my second and last CEDAR workshop as the student rep. Thank you to everyone who presented and came out today. I hope you've enjoyed the day so far, and I can't wait to talk to you all at the reception and throughout the week.